Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Game of FinTech, where we explore the latest trends, challenges, and advancements in the advice FinTech landscape. Today, I'm joined by our very own Peter Warne, and we're going to be having a chat about AI. So, Pete, our audience are highly intelligent people, but let's just sort of recap what exactly is AI. We sort of use it every day. I think, we've been using it for several years when we use social media and Siri and Alexa and all that sort of stuff. So let's just sort of run over what AI is.
Sure. So full disclosure, this is the real me. This is not
Or is
a
it?
bot or something. um, or is it? Yeah. So look, AI's, AI's been discussed for
Mm,
decades now, but it's only really in the last year or so it's become, you know, part of the mainstream conversation with technology. And AI has been, being the subject of so much noise, particularly in Silicon Valley. So, Google, Microsoft, these businesses have been acquiring AI companies for a long, long time. So this is not new. And you're absolutely right. You touched on things like Google Home and Alexa and all these tools we're just sort of early iterations of AI. And there's a lot of things that sit under AI, you know, which people would commonly sort of refer to
mm,
as things like machine learning, robotic process automation, which is not really AI, it's a robot. But probably the one that's become the most dominant sort of feature people are seeing more of today is large language models. Is the new sort of version of AI, which is of which ChatGPT is one of them. And so what's really happened is that these tools are now easier to
mm,
use because we can chat with them. So in the past, these large language models have been around, but we haven't really been able to find an interface or a way to engage with them. And very simply, how I think about it, a large language model is basically a statistical engine, which is really, really good at predicting what the next bit of text will be. So you prompt it with some text and it'll actually anticipate the other things that you're probably going to ask it at the same time. So it is, and ultimately, all software is just still zeros and ones. This thing just does it at a
mm,
scale we've never ever seen before. But there's another component that you need to have for AI to work really well, and that's the chatbot engine, effectively. And that ChatGPT is one of those. And what the chatbots are getting particularly good at is they're basically allowing or playing that role of an interpreter between these large statistical models and what a human would need to do to prompt it and get out of it, and I'd talk to it like a real person. That's what's really changed for our perspective. So whenever you're talking about building chatbots, that's effectively what you're doing. You've got a large language model which sits behind it, of which OpenAI is one of them, and there's another one called Llama, and Google had Bard, and then you have these interfaces,
mm.
which is ChatGPT is an interface to get the best out of that model. So I just thought it was good context to sort of set it up that there is core componentry, and I guess one of the really interesting challenges is for people in this space to understand is, well, if I'm buying a tool or if I'm investing in a company, what am I really investing in? Am I investing in a large language model or am I investing in
Mhm.
a bot, a chat bot, effectively? And that's what we've seen a massive explosion in of people using these chat bots for very industry specific applications. And we can probably talk more about that. So,
Yeah, and I guess
yeah,
that's
that's how
sort
I
of
think about it.
like yesterday I was creating a Zap in Zapier, and I didn't realize that it had actually embedded AI
Mm.
into Zapier now. So, where you used to actually have to go and sort of do some manual stuff to build your Zap, you now just say, I want to connect Xero with Salesforce and I want it to bring this client data into this area. It built the Zap for me. So I did most of the work, which was pretty cool. So that's kind of the examples we're looking at
Mm.
when you say, where look at the product and where the AI is actually sitting.
Yeah, so I'm probably at the point where the way I'm thinking about AI, and even for our sector, is that I think AI is a feature of our products. It won't necessarily be the product. So you won't use just one AI tool. You'll be using many. And even today, right now, you're probably using AI
Mhm.
in your Microsoft environment. Maybe not, depending if you're testing it. You're using AI. If you use Canva, you're using AI today. It has all these AI features now. Just actually a bunch of whole release this morning. So we sort of see, I think we'll see it that way. And what it means is that we need to think differently about the software we're using. We need to think differently about how we engage with software to get the most out of the AI features, which will just become quite ubiquitous in all
Yeah,
software
yeah,
solutions that we
exactly.
use
And I
today.
was sort of thinking about the way we work with our clients at Finura, and when we're doing our technology consulting projects, we really focus on the foundational problems that people are having. So obviously, typically that's sitting in the back office when it comes to reviews and implementation of advice and advice production and all those things that we all understand and feel the pain of every single day. Um, and we really focus on building that foundation first. We're not really talking about AI a lot, and we're not actually putting AI in our tech roadmaps at the moment. And I'm sort of thinking, how, this is obviously going to become part of what we do moving forward. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Like, we'll be talking about some, integration issues or data problems or all these other things that we deal with every day. And then someone always says, "Oh, but what about AI?" And I think it's just because it's the sexy, kind of
Yeah.
interesting thing people want to talk about. And maybe there's this view it's the magic pill
Hmm.
to solve all our problems, in the same, like, if you go to see um, a fitness instructor, the first question they probably get is, well, not, oh, how many reps and times do I need to go to the gym every morning? It's like, oh, I heard about this supplement, and if I take it, it'll get me this so much quicker. I think that is how humans think. We just literally want a magic pill. So you're spot on, and I think and it's kind of interesting for Finura because we've sort of experimented
Hmm.
behind the scenes, right, with a few things, just
Mm.
ourselves, just to have a play with it. But as you experiment, you start working out, hey, this stuff has a long way to go. It's not quite ready, in terms of deploying into a real commercial environment yet. So you're spot on. And I like the work, and even with how we find Danny, like a lot of the challenges we deal with in businesses,
Hmm.
they're not just purely tech, right? They're people, they're process, a whole bunch of stuff. So the reality is we could throw all sorts of weird, wonderful AI at our clients, but if the foundations of the business are right, the people and capability aren't right to use them, then it's never going to work. And I'd suggest there's a whole bunch of people out there that used ChatGPT a couple
Hmm.
of times, thought, oh, this is really cool,
Yeah.
and haven't touched it again, have just gone back to their way of doing things. So this is as much about a human adoption
Hmm.
of technology story as much as everything else. Um, and I think we're at that same juncture of think about how long it took. I mean, we've been in the industry a similar period of time, right? How long did it take for advisors to get comfortable for using cloud software as opposed
Yeah.
to desktop software that
Yeah.
they loaded on their
Yeah.
system? How
Years
long
and
did that
years.
take? Like, that was years. I think we're in this. I think we're in the
Yeah,
same
and I
journey with
think
this stuff, hopefully.
you're right. We still need a human, and I think that rightly so. There's the noise out there that AI is going to replace us, and potential job losses and all that sort of thing. But I find if I use ChatGPT, you've got to really know what to ask it, and you've got to ask it in the right way, and to get the outcome that you're looking for, whatever that outcome might be from ChatGPT. I can't. It's not going to think. Sorry, it is going to think for me, but it doesn't know. Can't read my mind. It can't read the question I'm trying to articulate necessarily.
No, and it never says, "Oh,
No.
gee, have you thought about this?" or "Have you thought about that?" It really relies on prompting, and so a lot of big companies are now hiring. This is a new job title. This is a good example of how it does. Yes, it eliminates jobs, but it creates jobs. So prompt engineers
Hmm.
is now becoming a big thing in America. So your job is literally to be an expert prompter of these large language models to get the very best out of it. In the same way that a great financial advisor is the one who can ask the great questions of a client. I think it's the same thing with this sort of technology, right? So um, I would, rather than, and what we're saying to businesses is, rather than sort of become overwhelmed and looking at all these different tech solutions that are out there, think about what is the skill sets, what are the kind of people we're going to need in our business to
Hmm.
get the best out of these tools in the future. And I think those types of skill sets, prompt engineers, people training on these tools, is going to be the key thing, not necessarily just throwing
Yeah.
tech at the
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the thing that I guess is still surprising me though is we're almost getting a
Mm-hmm.
question or two every day,
Mm.
right, from our clients or prospects about, I've had a pitch, I've had a demo for these people, and they claim they can do this,
Yeah.
this, and this. What do you think? And I'm becoming quite curious. I'm seeing quite a lot of new tech entrants who are looking at financial services, definitely wealth management, accounting, legal, and are launching AI chatbots, which they
Mm-hmm.
claim are industry specific for us, is happening. So I think that's what's causing a lot of this stuff is there's just a lot of pitches happening and people going, wow. I just thought I'd share one story though. So I had a call from a sort of an institutional client yesterday who had sat through a demo of this tool, and I was quite staggered because and I won't mention the tool, but it's one of the tools that claims to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do file
Okay.
notes really efficiently, right, from recording meetings. And and they said, "Oh, gee, it's great. It can record your meeting. It can join your Teams call or your Zoom call. It can transcribe, and then it can put it into a file note." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, but
Mm.
transcription's been around for a long time. So is summarizing of meeting notes. Like Teams does that already. Zoom does it now as well. AI Otter does that as well. And they had no idea that
Mm-hmm.
Teams could transcribe because their company had not turned on that feature, and yet they were contemplating paying $300 a month per user for a
Wow.
tool that does that. So this is this is as much an example of just not understanding the depth of the capability you've already got in your tech stack. And I know it's something you're big on, Dana,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Speeding
And I
those things
think,
you've already got.
you've got to have that foundation right. You've got to understand, you've got to have your processes right. You've got to understand what it is you're doing on a day-to-day basis and have that, well articulated and embedded into embedded into your business and, obviously ideally into your technology. And until we sort of get that right, what are we throwing AI at? What's it actually going to do for us? Do we know what problems it's going to be solving for us? Have we figured that out yet? I don't know. I think, at the moment, where
Yeah.
AI can help is just those really simple things, right? But to your point earlier, when we first started the podcast, is prompting what your next little bit in the email is going to be. All that sort of productivity side of things when it comes to the mundane day to day stuff. I think that's where it can sort of really support. But sort of thinking that it's going to replace how we produce advice and what happens in our advice journey, it's going to be this magic pill that makes everything super efficient, then yeah, I think we've got a way to go before we get to that point. Maybe we will get to that point, but I think we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, that it doesn't solve the challenge of trying to extract the data out of a client to get all the information on the table and make all those things, real. It doesn't solve the problem of trying to explain. Well, it can help trying to explain really difficult concepts to clients because you can actually use it to create analogies and different things. But let's face it, so much coaching of clients for advisors happens on a whiteboard or over a meeting where they're literally using stories, and those sort
Yeah.
of things. And that's a human interaction. So, certainly when it comes to content generation, data analysis, all those things behind the scenes, absolutely some awesome opportunities there. But even still, you know, even with all the software tools we've seen out there, we still see people gravitating towards back to
Hmm.
Excel, back to the things they know. And as I said, this is just a human thing that we're just going to have to grapple with, how we coexist with AI, how we use AI as a tool. I think it, in the same way that probably, learning how to use
Hmm.
email was probably a thing many years ago, when that first sort of happened and how we change our business processes around using email. I think we're just on that journey and it's not an overnight thing. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with businesses sort of thinking about this stuff and experimenting, but just be mindful that we're
Yeah.
on probably a 10-year journey for some of this stuff as we were with cloud computing when it first sort of happened. And this,
Hmm.
we are in a hype cycle, well and truly. So a hype cycle is where you have lots of cash, venture capital being thrown at a particular idea. So there's been a number of hype cycles. Cloud computing had a hype cycle. .coms had a hype
Hmm.
cycle. Crypto had a hype cycle, and now we're really into an AI hype cycle. So that's probably why you're going to continue to see a proliferation of startups claiming to have AI capabilities. And again, a lot of them, all they're really doing is putting wrappers around existing solutions. So they're using OpenAI's large language model, and they're building a little product around it. But in reality, in the long run, those things will be quite ubiquitous, in the same way that and we're coaching clients to just hit the pause button.
Yeah.
Let's just see what Microsoft throws at us.
Because we've already got it, right?
Copilot.
Microsoft, everybody,
For
all of
me-
us have Microsoft on our desktops. We're already paying for it. It's pretty reasonably priced. I totally agree.
Yeah. So even Copilot, I think Copilot will cost, I think it's $30 a month US is what they're going to charge. I don't know what the Australian version will be, but that's what they're quoting. And so just for clarity, so Copilot will be the ability to use Chat GPT, or a chat bot, across all your Microsoft products. So it'll be in your Outlook, it'll be in your Word. And what's really cool about it is it'll actually be able to pull data from your Microsoft cloud, so SharePoint and OneDrive. It'll be able to source information that you have in your environment and put it in those
cool.
contexts that are relevant. So, for example, it might be able to take a Word document and put it into a PowerPoint deck. Now, it's not going to be perfect and all the rest of it, but it's going to give us some really interesting things to play with. And I would suggest that having a play with that in a really secure, safe environment, backed by the trillion-dollar empire that Microsoft is a much better bet than going all in on a startup who claims to have something, and in reality, you don't know where that data goes in the long run, how it's managed, where it's hosted, and all that sort of stuff. So I just really want to give my strongest recommendation that is your best bet in the next 12 months, is to see what we can.
Good point. And I think we always have to be mindful, don't we, of that security and data protection, and all of those things always need to be front of our mind, especially now. And to your point, Microsoft they spend, we got the figure once, I can't remember what it is, billions of dollars per year on.
I think it was 40 billion US per year on security. And the R&D number was 150 billion. It was just, you can't get your head around how much they're spending on these things. And so just so people understand, one of the risks with some of these smaller providers is they are just using large language models. They'll be using cloud-based solutions in different geographies, and that's okay, but you don't know what happens with the data once it goes into these systems. So whilst they say they might be deleting it, you really don't know. The cool thing about the way Microsoft are doing it is that your data will still be in your secure Microsoft environment, so SharePoint, and the AI comes into that environment. You're not sending data out, is the easiest way I can explain it, and that's why we feel it's a much safer bet for the time being. And for those of you, that are Google fan people, Google Suite will have all this stuff too. It already does. It's in beta at the moment. So Google Bard will have the same features across Google Docs and all this. So, it's just so competitive, Danny, right? And this is, I don't know what you think, but I think this is why, I don't know, do you just think AI will just be this feature that people are just going to expect in their software more than anything else, rather than being a sort of
I agree. And to your point, my Zapier experience and Canva as well. I've used the AI in Canva, and it's actually quite cool. We use AI in our podcast when we're editing our podcast back. It works all right.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
that's right.
It doesn't make it sound any harder, but it saves time. Do you have a prediction though? Do you think there'll be any of the wealth tech providers locally that use AI? Who will be the first to really do it? To really start embedding AI?
It's a really good question. I think that they have so many other things to focus on, and we always talk about client portals, for example. They're underutilized. We should be using client portals. We're going to have an investment in that side of things, and I think when it comes to advice technology and their development pipelines, they're long, they're never ending, they're expensive, they're resource heavy. To then bring AI into those, fundamental challenges that they have to sort of figure out to maintain their users and increase their users and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I feel like maybe we might see simplified ways of using AI in those pieces of technology, but I don't see it rocking our worlds. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I think.
Mm.
Look, I'm sure people are thinking about it. I mean, I'd love to talk to any businesses that are, and for clarity,
Mm.
I don't mean like a startup. I just mean an established player who's actually looking at, well, what are the AI features we can bring? I think for me, the coolest use case would be just helping users use their software more easily. So not
Mm.
I'll pick on Xplan, right? So if you know how to use Xplan really well, you can glide your way through it, no problem. But there probably are a bunch of advisors who might log into Xplan once a week, once a month, and don't know how to get things done. If there was an interface in Xplan that said, "Hey, I'm just trying to find out this information about this
Mm-hmm.
client," you just simply talk to it, and it surfaces that data through the CRM.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty useful, I would think, for a lot of advisors. Bill and Debbie Smith are coming in for a meeting. Can you just show me the latest balances, last file notes, all those things, rather than going in and all the rest of it? So I don't know. I'd just be curious about is it just sort of as you I think you said it, like a simpler a simpler interface
Mm-hmm.
between you and the CRM is a concept. But you're probably right. It's probably more likely we'll see
Yes.
Salesforce do something
Yeah, I think so.
first on
Absolutely.
that front. You
Those
know,
huge the tech providers at Salesforce. I think I agree. I think we'll see it in there. They'll have the demand right then.
it was kind of interesting. Our CRM, which is Zoho, I was putting a new thing in our pipeline the other day, and it sort of prompted me that I should assign the deal to
Mm-hmm.
one of our team, DePaul. And I don't know why, but it used AI to say, oh, well, in this scenario, she seems to convert. Yeah, it just was prompting me to
Wow.
assign deals and those things. So I don't think that use case works necessarily in a financial planning context, but you can see if you're a business that is heavy duty sales management and you had 50 sales associates
Mm.
around the country and you had prospects and leads happening and it was sort of giving you, well, based on current trends, this salesperson's killing it,
Yeah.
assign it to
Yeah.
them was sort of what it was doing. So again, that for me just reinforces that opportunity. I feel that that's there that you can you can actually really embed
Mm-hmm.
AI in a lot of tools, but
Yeah.
it won't be a new
Yeah.
tool
Yeah. Agreed.
necessarily. If that makes sense.
Now, what do we think about sort of, I sort of think about AI and there's not really any regulation at the moment. We've got no sort of government direction on how this is going to be utilized and rolled out and regulated moving forward. I think we need to be really mindful about what we're putting into. If we are using ChatGPT, for example, we've got to be really careful not to be putting sensitive data in there. And I'm not sure if we're being that careful at the moment and redacting client information or business intelligence and all that sort of stuff. Where do we think this is going to head from a regulatory perspective? This is obviously a global issue that is going to have to be addressed at some point. Are we going to let this just roll and see what happens, or are we going to, have guardrails in place?
I think the real challenge. So in the states, this is a hot issue, but I think it's more from a competition perspective. So they are very nervous that Microsoft's just going to own the AI landscape, and and obviously you've got competitors saying, "Oh, it's not fair that Microsoft own all this stuff," and that's a thing. But I think the framework ultimately is going to be about consumer protection. So what are the things that a government needs to do to protect consumers against improper use of AI? And I mean, let's face it. You listen to some of the government inquiries on different things, and the average politician just does not
Mm-hmm.
have any grasp of some of these challenges. And there is also a real lack of what a single regulatory body would be for this thing. We have very industry specific regulatory bodies, but we don't really have technology
Mm-hmm.
focused regulatory bodies. So I think the government has a long way to come on this stuff because I think it'll just things will keep rolling. I mean, let's look at crypto. That only really
Yeah.
got properly regulated last year, and I've sort
Mm-hmm.
of missed the boat, So I just frankly I think the same thing's going to happen. So the my how we're thinking about it, like we're advising clients to train your employees to not put customer data into ChatGPT. Just don't even get in the habit of doing it. Just stop. Only use a secure version of Bing Enterprise, which is the ChatGPT for this. So I really think let's just embed some good behaviors day one. And I have to say, at least we're not completely going in blind, because we know not to put sensitive things on social media. We know that email is not so secure. Like, it's cyber is such an awareness piece. So I really feel that that's the thing. The thing that I'm kind of curious on, I think things that professionals, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, financial planner, have to grapple with is the ethical side of it. Is how much do we disclose to our clients that we've used AI to come up with these recommendations, or that we've used AI to generate this communication, and do we disclose that this is an AI generated communication? And I think that's interesting. I think that's a conversation worth having, because I think businesses should disclose if it's an AI generated communication. I don't know. What do you think? Would you want to know if it was an AI?
I think I would. Yeah. I've actually never thought of that. Sorry, you caught me off guard with that question. I think, ethical issues need to be taken into consideration. I do want to know if as my advisor come up with this strategic direction that I'm going to be taking with my life moving forward and my financial situation, or has this been molded by ChatGPT or another AI related tool? Yeah, agreed.
And I'm really surprised. I haven't heard anyone having that conversation in our industry just yet. And I think that's the first conversation we should be having is what's our duty of disclosure to our clients? What are the ethical considerations we need to consider as a business? So that's not for Finura to answer, but I think better minds than ours should be grappling with that, and for me, the industry has to solve that. But I ultimately feel that you as an advisor just have to think about what would you want if you were the other client, and I think you're right. I think most people would lean on what you just said, Danny, that they're happy to get an AI generated communication about an issue that say whatever, but it should be disclosed that this has actually been an auto generated.
Yeah, right. And I think also to your point earlier, it is opinionated, right? The engine is actually opinionated, so you can ask it a question and it's going to give you an opinion. So yeah, I think you're right. I would want to know that. That's a existential crisis I'm going to start having to think about. Thank you. Excellent.
Just more problems to grapple with in the world.
All right. So what do we have as key takeaways? I think, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here again. Exactly what you're saying there. I think that all comes down to, again, having your foundations right, understanding your processes, understanding exactly how you're going to interact with your clients. Now we're talking about ethically, forming a process around how that's going to play out too, if we are using these tools, but get that technology right first, get that up and running, have your clients and have your staff embedded into that technology, using it really well. Then let's take a look at AI on top of that. And I think, from a regulatory perspective, making sure that we're readdressing and revisiting anything that we are doing in AI, making sure that's a regular, quarterly, annual, whatever you want to do, but make sure we're regularly revisit, because this is going to move really quickly, right?
Yeah, I certainly don't think it'll be a solid defense in court if you say, well, I'm sorry, but the bot generated that bit of information or a bit of advice which was incorrect and caused problems for my client. That's not going to be a rock solid defense, I don't think. So yeah, so I like all of his common sense, but I think and again, don't want to sound all doom and gloom. And I think that the best thing a business can do, as I said, in the next 12 months is really get invested in what Copilot from Microsoft can do for us, and start from there and build out.
Yeah, good. Sorry, I'm going to add one more. Do your due diligence. We always harp on about this. Do your due diligence. If you are sort of experimenting with tools outside of what Microsoft is working on from an AI perspective, then do your due diligence. How are these people being capitalized? Where are they? Where's your data being stored? How do you know that? Really understand who it is that you're working with.
Yep. Going to be a lot of vaporware out there in the next couple of years.
Feel
So
it, yeah.
be alert.
Excellent.
Good idea.
All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Game of FinTech. If you haven't already, you can do our tech health check. You can find that at www.faneragroup.com, and we'll see you next time.